Most people buy a Japanese SUV because they think they're escaping the headache of high maintenance costs. But there is a massive financial trap hiding right under the hood that nobody calculates before signing the paperwork. I spent 6 months pulling real dealer invoices, independent shop records, and owner reports across every major Japanese SUV on sale in America today. The results will genuinely surprise you. 15 rankings, one clear winner. Let's get into it. Number 15. The Nissan Murano. The Nissan Murano sits at the bottom of this list for one reason that most buyers never see coming until they are already 2 years into ownership. The Murano uses a continuously variable transmission, the same CVT platform that has generated more owner complaints, more early replacement costs, and more forum horror stories than almost any other drivetrain component in the Japanese SUV segment. Nissan's CVT on the Murano has a documented history of requiring full replacement between 80,000 and 100,000 miles on vehicles that were maintained correctly and driven normally. A CVT replacement on the Murano runs between $4,000 and $5,000 at an independent shop. At a dealership, that number climbs past $6,000. This is not a worst-case scenario cost. It is the median outcome for high-mileage Murano ownership in America based on aggregated repair order data. Beyond the transmission, the Murano requires an expensive all-wheel drive transfer case and power steering service. The seals on these systems are notorious for developing major fluid leaks, adding another $1,200 to $1,800 to the ownership picture at the 100,000-mile mark. The Murano looks premium, drives smoothly, and consistently receives strong initial quality ratings. What those ratings do not capture is the cliff that appears at 80,000 miles when the CVT begins its decline. The Murano bleeds money from the transmission alone, but the next SUV on this list has a completely different cost problem hiding inside its engine bay that dealers actively avoid mentioning at the point of sale. Number 14. The Infiniti QX60. The Infiniti QX60 is the Murano wearing a luxury badge and a higher price tag, which means every maintenance cost from the Murano follows it upward with an additional premium layer on top. The QX60 shares its drivetrain architecture with the Murano, including the same CVT platform with the same documented failure timeline. But the QX60 adds luxury segment labor rates to every repair, meaning the same CVT replacement that cost $5,000 on a Murano costs $7,000 to $8,000 on the QX60 at an Infiniti dealership. The QX60 also introduces an additional cost center the Murano does not carry: the multi-link rear suspension system that delivers the car-like handling. Infiniti markets aggressively requires bushing and control arm replacement between 60,000 and 80,000 miles. That service runs between $800 and $1,200 at an independent shop, and considerably more at a dealer. Subscribe to this channel right now if these numbers are already changing how you look at your next SUV purchase. We poll real repair data so you never walk into a dealership uninformed again. The QX60 stacks luxury costs on top of mass market reliability problems, but the next SUV on this list has the highest brake replacement cost in this entire ranking, and almost nobody talks about it. Number 13. The Mitsubishi Outlander. The Mitsubishi Outlander makes this list at 13 because of a specific maintenance pattern that appears so consistently in independent shop records that technicians who work on them regularly refer to it as the Outlander cycle. The Outlander's all-wheel drive system uses an electronically controlled center coupling that requires fluid changes at intervals Mitsubishi specifies in the owner's manual, but that most dealers never proactively mention during routine service visits. When this fluid is neglected beyond the specified interval, the coupling develops engagement issues that produce a shudder on acceleration and ultimately require full coupling replacement. That coupling replacement costs between $1,500 and $2,200 at an independent shop and approaches $3,000 at a Mitsubishi dealership. The fluid change that prevents it costs $45. The Outlander also uses brake rotors that are sized aggressively for the vehicle's weight class, which means they wear faster than owners expect. Front brake service on the Outlander, including rotors and pads, runs between $400 and $500 per axle at independent shops, putting it among the highest brake costs in this segment. The Outlander punishes owners who skip the small services, but the next SUV on this list has an oil consumption problem so significant that it triggered a class action lawsuit that most current buyers have never even heard of. Number 12. The Subaru Forester. The Subaru Forester earns a reputation for ruggedness and reliability. that its sales figures reflect year after year. What those sales figures do not reflect is the oil consumption issue affecting the 2.5-liter four-cylinder engine across multiple model year generations that has cost owners significant money and significantly shortened engine life on high-mileage examples. Affected Foresters can consume up to 1 quart of oil every 1,000 miles under normal driving conditions without triggering any warning light or producing any noticeable symptom beyond the oil level dropping silently between changes. Owners who follow the dealership recommendation to check oil only at service intervals can unknowingly run their engine dangerously low between appointments. The long-term consequence is accelerated wear on piston rings, cylinder walls, and valvetrain components that produces engine failures between 150,000 and 200,000 miles on vehicles that otherwise appear well maintained. Beyond the oil issue, the Forester's head gasket has a documented failure pattern on higher mileage examples that produces a repair bill between $1,500 and $2,500, a cost that appears suddenly and without significant warning. The Forester costs less upfront than most competitors, but carries hidden long-term engine costs. But the next SUV on this list has the most expensive routine maintenance schedule of any vehicle in this entire ranking. Number 11. The Acura MDX. The Acura MDX is the most expensive vehicle to maintain routinely in this entire ranking, not because it breaks down frequently, but because Honda engineered its flagship SUV around a maintenance philosophy that treats every service visit as a premium event. The MDX uses a 9-speed automatic transmission that requires Honda-specific ATF fluid available almost exclusively through Honda and Acura dealerships. Independent shops can source it, but at a price premium that eliminates most of the labor cost savings from avoiding the dealer. A routine transmission fluid service on the MDX costs between $250 and $350 at an independent shop, compared to under $100 for a comparable Toyota transmission service. The MDX also requires a timing belt replacement, not a chain, at 90,000 miles. That service on the MDX, including the water pump that Honda recommends replacing simultaneously, runs between $900 and $1,200 at an independent shop and $1,500 or more at an Acura dealer. The SHAWD all-wheel drive system adds another maintenance layer with rear differential fluid requiring replacement at 30,000-mile intervals to prevent the multi-plate clutch system from developing shudder on tight turns. The MDX is genuinely reliable. It is just genuinely expensive to maintain in the process, but the next SUV on this list has the single most surprising maintenance record in the entire ranking for an entirely different reason. Number 10. The Mazda CX-9. The Mazda CX-9 earns a spot at number 10 because of a specific cost that catches nearly every owner off guard, one that Mazda engineered into the vehicle deliberately, and that becomes unavoidable somewhere between 80,000 and 120,000 miles. The CX-9 uses a turbocharged 2.5-liter Skyactiv engine that Mazda specifies full synthetic oil at 5,000-mile intervals. Following this interval correctly is not optional on this engine. The turbocharger on the CX-9 runs exceptionally hot, and the oil circulating through it degrades faster than naturally aspirated engine oil under normal operating conditions. Owners who stretch the oil change interval to 7,000 or 8,000 miles, which feels reasonable based on every previous car they have owned, allow the oil to coke inside the turbocharger oil feed passages. Once coking begins, the turbocharger bearing clearances tighten. Turbocharger replacement on the CX-9 runs between $2,000 and $3,000 at an independent shop. Beyond the turbocharger sensitivity, the CX-9 requires spark plug replacement at 60,000-mile intervals at a cost that shocks most owners because the high heat of the turbocharger requires specialized, expensive high-performance plugs, and accessing them requires removing several protective engine shields. The CX-9 rewards disciplined maintenance and punishes neglect, but the next SUV on this list has a suspension cost that appears without warning and that no amount of disciplined maintenance actually prevents. Number 9. The Toyota Highlander. The Toyota Highlander belongs at number 9 on this list because it sits at the exact intersection of high volume and moderate hidden costs, a combination that produces a specific financial pattern that affects more American families than any other SUV in this ranking. The Highlander's V6 engine used through the 2020 model year is genuinely reliable and rarely produces surprise repair costs. The Highlander's hidden maintenance expense comes from a different direction entirely. The third-row seating mechanism combined with the independent rear suspension produces accelerated bushing wear that appears between 60,000 and 90,000 miles on vehicles used as intended family haulers. Rear suspension bushing replacement on the Highlander runs between $600 and $900 at an independent shop. It is not catastrophic. It is simply consistent and predictable, and almost never mentioned during the sales conversation. The Highlander also has a transmission cooler line that develops leaks on higher mileage examples, particularly in markets that experience significant temperature variation between seasons. That repair runs between $300 and $500 when caught early, and considerably more when the leak causes transmission fluid loss that goes unnoticed. The Highlander costs less to own than most owners fear, and more than the reputation alone suggests. But the next SUV on this list has a hybrid battery replacement cost that makes every other maintenance expense on this list look minor by comparison. Number 8. The Toyota RAV4 Hybrid. The Toyota RAV4 Hybrid generates ownership enthusiasm in America that few vehicles in any segment can match right now. Fuel economy numbers that regularly exceed 35 miles per gallon in mixed driving, available all-wheel drive without a conventional drive shaft, strong resale values that hold better than almost any competitor. The hidden cost that the RAV4 Hybrid enthusiasm rarely acknowledges is the high-voltage battery pack sitting beneath the rear cargo floor. Toyota's RAV4 Hybrid battery is genuinely well-engineered and carries a 10-year, 150,000-mile warranty in most states for the original owner. The problem emerges for second and third owners who purchase used examples outside the warranty coverage window. A RAV4 Hybrid battery replacement outside warranty runs between $4,000 and $6,000. At a Toyota dealership, independent shops with hybrid certification can perform the service for between $2,500 and $3,500. The probability of needing the service before 200,000 miles is lower than critics suggest, but meaningfully higher than Toyota's marketing implies. Owners who purchase used RAV4 hybrids without understanding this cost exposure consistently report surprise and frustration when the battery capacity begins degrading, and the fuel economy that justified the purchase premium starts to disappear. The RAV4 hybrid battery cost is manageable with planning but devastating without it. But the next SUV on this list has the highest frequency of minor maintenance costs in the entire ranking. It adds up to a number that genuinely shocks owners when they calculate it over 5 years. Number 7. The Honda Pilot. The Honda Pilot sits at number 7 because it represents something specific and instructive about how Japanese SUV maintenance costs work. It is a vehicle where no single repair is catastrophic, and the cumulative cost of small and medium services across a full ownership cycle adds up to a figure that catches most owners off. Quote, Guard, the Pilot uses a 10-speed automatic transmission introduced in the 2019 model year that requires transmission fluid exchanges at 30,000-mile intervals to maintain shift quality and prevent the harsh engagement behavior that appears on examples where the fluid is neglected. That service runs between $150 and $200 each time, which is manageable individually, but adds meaningfully to the ownership cost across 100,000 miles. The Pilot's variable cylinder management system, which shuts down 3 of the 6 cylinders under light load to improve fuel economy, requires specific attention to oil change interval compliance. Engines with VCM that receive oil changes beyond 6,000 miles on conventional oil develop oil consumption patterns that worsen progressively. The front and rear differential services add another recurring cost that the Pilot's competitors with simpler drivetrain arrangements do not carry. Every 60,000 miles, both differentials require fluid replacement at a combined cost of between $150 and $250 at an independent shop. The Pilot accumulates costs quietly across dozens of small service events, but the next SUV on this list carries a single, specific repair that appears so predictably at a specific mileage that independent shops in high-volume Lexus markets actually prepare for it in advance. Number 6. The Lexus R. The Lexus RX is the best-selling luxury SUV in America and has held that position for most of the past 2 decades. It earns that position through a combination of genuine Toyota platform reliability, exceptional interior quality, and a dealer experience that sets the standard for the luxury segment. The hidden maintenance cost on the RX appears in the brake system, specifically in a pattern that Lexus engineers into the vehicle through the same performance-oriented brake specification that makes the RX feel so controlled and composed during normal driving. The RX uses large-diameter brake rotors for its class and pads with a friction compound specification that prioritizes feel and modulation over longevity. The result is brake rotor replacement intervals that arrive 15,000 to 20,000 miles sooner than owners accustomed to mainstream Japanese SUVs expect. Front brake service on the RX, including both rotors and pads at the Lexus recommended quality level, runs between $500 and $700 at an independent shop. The RX also introduces an additional cost for owners of the V6 version. The timing chain tensioner has a documented noise issue on high mileage examples that requires dealer attention and runs between $800 and $1,200 to resolve properly. The Lexus RX costs more to maintain than the Toyota Highlander it shares a platform with and less than most German luxury competitors. But the next SUV on this list has the most debated maintenance cost reputation in the entire segment, and the real numbers finally settle the argument. Number 5. The Honda CR-V. The Honda CR-V is America's best-selling non-truck vehicle in multiple recent years, which means the maintenance cost profile of this SUV affects more families directly than any other vehicle in this ranking. The CR-V's most significant hidden cost is one that Honda addressed in production, but never fully resolved in the public conversation. The 1.5-liter turbocharged engine in models from 2017 through 2019 has a documented oil dilution issue in cold climates, where short-trip driving in cold weather allows unburned gasoline to accumulate in the engine oil. Owners in cold weather states, who primarily use their CR-V for short daily commutes under 10 miles report oil that smells of gasoline and appears significantly overfull on the dipstick between changes. This oil dilution accelerates engine wear and compromises lubrication film strength. The practical response is reducing oil change intervals to 4,000 miles in affected climates, which adds meaningful cost to the ownership equation across the vehicle's life. Beyond the dilution issue, the CR-V suffers from premature rear brake pad wear because the vehicle's electronic parking brake system frequently drags, and because Honda uses smaller pads on the rear axle, owners find themselves replacing rear brakes every 25 to 30,000 miles, nearly double the frequency of competing SUVs. The CR-V costs less per incident than most competitors, but more per year than its reputation alone suggests. But the next SUV on this list has the lowest dealer service costs in the entire ranking, and the data behind that position is more interesting than the number itself. Number 4. The Mazda CX-5. The Mazda CX-5 earns 4th position in this ranking for reasons that reflect both genuine engineering discipline and a specific ownership philosophy that Mazda builds into the vehicle from the ground up. The CX-5 uses a naturally aspirated Skyactiv engine in its base and most popular configuration, which immediately removes the turbocharger vulnerability that places the CX-9 at number 10 on this list. Without forced induction, the primary engine maintenance costs reduce to oil changes, spark plugs at a reasonable 60,000-mile interval, and an air filter that is genuinely accessible and inexpensive. The CX-5's independent rear suspension is engineered with bushing specifications that outlast comparable Toyota and Honda units by a measurable margin in independent wear testing, reducing the suspension maintenance frequency that affects the Highlander and Pilot at similar mileage intervals. The CX-5's brake specification uses rotors and pads balanced for longevity rather than maximum initial feel, producing brake service intervals that average 60,000 miles on front axles under normal driving conditions. That interval is 15,000 to 20,000 miles longer than the Lexus RX, and comparable to the best performers in the mainstream segment. The CX-5 rewards owners who maintain it correctly and charges them less than most competitors for doing so, but the next SUV on this list has a reliability record that is so strong it actually changes the total cost of ownership calculation in a way that no other factor on this list can replicate. Number 3. The Toyota 4Runner. The Toyota 4Runner enters this ranking at number 3, carrying a maintenance cost profile that is almost paradoxical relative to everything else on this list. A body on-frame SUV from 2010, using engine technology from the mid-2000s that cost less to maintain across 150,000 miles. BN almost every newer, more technologically sophisticated vehicle above it. The 4Runner uses a naturally aspirated 4-liter V6 engine with a conventional 5-speed automatic transmission, a timing chain that rarely requires attention before 200,000 miles, and a solid front axle that eliminates the ball joint and control arm costs that affect independent front suspension competitors at high mileage. Independent shop owners in markets with high 4Runner concentrations, the Southwest and Pacific Northwest, primarily report that 4Runners arrive for maintenance more than repairs across their operational lifespan. The most common 4Runner repair costs involve brake service at reasonable intervals, fluid replacements in the transfer case and differentials, and an occasional wheel bearing that announces itself with plenty of warning before causing any additional damage. The 4Runner's off-road capability and its resale value combine with its low maintenance cost to produce a total ownership cost figure that routinely beats vehicles costing $15,000 less at purchase. But the next SUV on this list has a hybrid system, so well engineered that it effectively eliminates two of the most common maintenance costs that every other vehicle on this list carries. Number 2, the Toyota Highlander Hybrid. The Toyota Highlander Hybrid earns the second position in this ranking by accomplishing something that sounds contradictory, adding a complex hybrid drivetrain to a mainstream SUV and reducing the total maintenance cost compared to the conventional version. The Highlander Hybrid's electric drive motors eliminate the rear drive shaft and traditional rear differential that the conventional Highlander uses to power the rear wheels, removing the differential fluid service that adds to the conventional version's maintenance cost across the ownership cycle. That alone saves between $300 and $500 across 100,000 miles compared to its non-hybrid sibling. The Highlander Hybrid's regenerative braking system reduces the load on the friction brakes during normal deceleration by capturing kinetic energy and returning it to the battery. Toyota engineers have documented that Highlander Hybrid brake pad life exceeds conventional Highlander pad life by between 40 and 60% under typical driving conditions. Brake service that arrives every 40,000 miles on a conventional Highlander often extends to 60,000 or beyond. On the hybrid version, the battery warranty for original owners covers 10 years or 150,000 miles, and Toyota's hybrid battery failure rate on Highlander hybrid production through the current generation is documented at less than 2% within the warranty period. Real-world Highlander hybrid examples at 200,000 miles with original battery packs are common and well documented in the owner community. The Highlander Hybrid costs less to maintain than the conventional version and far less than the luxury alternatives above it. But the next SUV on this list delivers the lowest total maintenance cost of anything in this entire ranking, and it does so with a vehicle that most people dismiss before they understand why it belongs at number 1. Number 1. The Toyota RAV4 non-hybrid. The Toyota RAV4 in its conventional non-hybrid configuration earns the top position in this ranking through a combination of factors that no single competitor replicates across the full ownership window. The RAV4 uses a 2.5-liter naturally aspirated dynamic force 4-cylinder engine in its current generation that Toyota engineering designed specifically around reduced internal friction, extended service intervals, and a chain-driven valvetrain that requires no scheduled replacement service across any normal ownership duration. Independent teardown analysis of high-mileage examples consistently shows bore, wear, and valvetrain wear rates that sit below those of any comparable engine from any other manufacturer in this segment. The RAV4's 8-speed automatic transmission uses fluid that Toyota specifies as lifetime fill, which means it requires no routine replacement under normal driving conditions, eliminating a service cost that appears on nearly every competitor's maintenance schedule at 30 to 60,000 mile intervals. Brake service on the RAV4 averages between 45,000 and 55,000 miles on front axles under normal driving conditions, using rotors and pads that cost significantly less per service event than the Lexus RX and Acura MDX platforms above it in the prestige ranking. The RAV4 also benefits from Toyota's parts availability advantage, because the RAV4 sells in higher volumes than any other vehicle in this segment in the American market. Aftermarket parts availability is broader, competition among suppliers is stronger, and service costs at independent shops are lower per event than comparable services on lower volume competitors. Over 150,000 miles of typical American ownership, the RAV4's total maintenance cost consistently comes in 15 to 25% below the segment average and 40% below the luxury tier alternatives that start at similar transaction prices. The data does not lie. The RAV4 wins not because it is the most exciting exciting, or the most capable, or the most prestigious. It wins because it costs the least to keep on the road for the longest time, with the fewest surprises along the way. Thanks for watching. If you found these rankings helpful, let us know which SUV you currently own in the comments. Want to see every hidden cost inside the most popular Japanese sedans ranked the same way? Click on the next video on the left. And if you do not want to miss more tips and secrets, hit that subscribe button.